Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Nasdaq listed Honeywell released its first quarter 2023 Environmental Sustainability Index, a quarterly indicator of key trends pertaining to global efforts in climate change mitigation and other sustainability initiatives. Evan Van Hook, Chief Sustainability Officer at Honeywell, joins me to discuss the key findings. Evan, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You got it, Evan. It's so interesting because Honeywell sits at the intersection of just about every industry, every vertical, whether it's logistics, aerospace and travel, healthcare, utilities, you name it, Honeywell touches those segments. So I think to get this holistic overview is super interesting. How are organizations approaching and prioritizing environmental initiatives?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. What we are seeing in the data, and this is the second ESI report, is that first of all, sustainability goals rank very, very high in corporate sort of priorities, which is great to see. And it's really been validated now twice. And corporations are really placing a lot of emphasis on sustainability generally. Within sustainability, I think what you see is that climate dominates everything. The climate issue, it's obviously both very important, but also it really touches everybody. It's global, and the approach to climate, there's almost nothing that you can do that doesn't somehow involve greenhouse gas emissions and the ability to do something about them. So it really touches everyone. So that really dominates the field now in terms of managing the issue, setting targets, driving to those targets. One of the things that I think is very interesting that you see in the data, however, from the ESI, and we're actually frankly talking about this with their CSOs, is you are seeing other areas start to rise in importance. And it makes me think that people are developing these muscles in the climate area, but then they're going to sort of take the same approach in some other important areas as well.
What are the top barriers to achieving environmental goals, and how does that compare to the previous report?
Sure. Well, again, climate is number one. And then after that, we have emissions reduction, which is another one of the categories that we look at. And then pollution prevention. And then finally, circularity. And I actually anticipate that circularity is going to grow in importance because it's really kind of encompassing. It really talks about how do we go from going extraction with resources to disposal, and think of more of a reuse kind of concept with our economy. And there's a lot of people that are looking at how do we do that in many areas. So again, you're really looking at climate, but then expanding out to other broader environmental protection goals.
How are companies leveraging technology to achieve their goals?
That's a fantastic question. And this is a really interesting point in the ESI. When we did the first ESI, you really saw a split of a very strong predominance of behavior and procedure over technology. And what that means to me is that when you start this journey, the first things you to start doing is saying, hey, we're going to operate this equipment differently, or we're going to have all of our employees turn off their equipment when they go home, things like that. It's low investment. You're sort of testing the waters. What we see in this next ESI is that balance is shifting from behavior and procedure into technology. Behavior still dominates, but you're seeing a very marked increase in technology. And what I think is probably most important is a big increase in the mixed. We're going to go to a more of an even balance of behavior and technology without having one or the other dominate. I think that's super important because behavior tends to spread the activity out more broadly. So you really get broad employee engagement. That's what those behavioral measures do. But technology is what you can do to really kind of supercharge your efforts and take what we like to call sort of Pac-Man sized bites out of your emissions. I mean, there's certain things where you just need new technology. For example, carbon capture and storage. That's something that you're not going to get from a behavioral aspect. You really need that heavy technology to do that.
Would you characterize the report as overall positive? And if so, what trends point to that?
I think from my perspective, it is quite positive. I would point to three really important things. First of all, there is the increase in optimism quarter over quarter. And I think that's really important because we look at three different phases: optimism over your past 12 months, optimism over your next 12 months, and optimism respecting your longer term goals out to 2030. And so that's what, if I look across those three sort of time spectrums, and I see that the people that work in this field are being increasingly optimistic about how successful they will be, that tells me that these experts see the ability to achieve these goals, and they're ready to commit to invest in them. The second thing is budgets. We're seeing a very large percentage of the companies preparing to expand their budgets in sustainability. And what that says to me is these companies are ready to act now for sort of ready now solutions, current investments. That's something that Honeywell focuses a lot on because we really like to take to the market solutions that are ready now. We're constantly developing new things, but we want people to know that there's things you can do right now with your investments. And then the third thing I think is targets. There you see an increase, a consistent increase in companies setting sustainability targets. And, targets on some level, you can say, oh, they're just words, but they are real drivers of sustainability performance in the corporate world. Any company that sets a target out there and says, this is where I want to be in 5 years or 10 years, there's a lot of emphasis there on really achieving those.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because you have to be able to quantify what you're putting pen to paper. So my question to you is, how can investors use the ESI?
I think that's also just, it's going to be so interesting. First of all, I would say, as a CSO, I find it extremely interesting because what you're essentially doing here is peeling back the curtain to see these are 750 people whose full-time job is working in sustainability. So these people's insight is really pretty close, as close as you're going to get to what's really going on. From an investor perspective, I think it's critically important that they understand how these sustainability programs are working, not just from headlines and sort of posters and statements that you make, but how are the folks that are really working on this feeling about this? How are they feeling about being able to implement those ready now solutions? And I think that's going to create tremendous insights for investors deciding whether or not this is a sector that they think is going to evolve.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that what's so remarkable about that, particularly like folks, chief sustainability officers such as yourself, you sit at that intersection of sustainability strategy as well as technology. And that's what I think makes your role really interesting. So what is Honeywell doing to remain committed to sustainability?
right. Well, I will say that this is something that I'm actually, in retrospect, really happy about. We started our approach back in 2004, and that was really early days. And we got a chance to try different things and experiment. And one of the things that we did in the core of our strategy is we actually built sustainability directly into our core operating system. And what that means is that over time, this has really kind of been part of our DNA. And so it would become actually almost difficult for Honeywell to sort of peel away from sustainability because it's been so built in. Now, that being said, there's a lot of very proactive things that we do. Our CEO has had about 2 or 3 town halls about sustainability so far over the last year or so. Also, I think our key message really is that we've been doing this now for about 2 decades. And internally, we've got these very strong programs. We've reduced our greenhouse gas intensity by more than 90% so far. But our full message is like, we have been doing this for 2 decades, and now we're really developing tremendous solutions to help other people do it as well. So it's sort of like a complete circular story that we find very attractive. And it also has created so much engagement internally because all of those people working on these products, working on sales, working on developing the internal projects, they all know that they're some part of something really important, both for the world and for the company. And so, frankly, our challenge has not been building engagement. It's really been keeping up with the sort of very serious and ambition within the company. And that's been a lot of fun.
All right, Evan, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.